Hi guys, welcome to the last segment of the show. So far we've been looking at the concept of savings. Guys, it's a big deal. Like honestly, it's a big deal. If you look at our country right now, as young people, we are really wasting money and we are not even paying attention to the news about financial literacy and all of that. So all of this, though, you must understand, and I will keep on saying, does not constitute as financial advice. I am just merely talking about numbers and mathematics, because after all, numbers are ruled by mathematics. So that's all that I'm just trying to do. But really, on a serious note now, you need to understand the concept of saving, because it's such a big idea that people are really not taking seriously. And at a very young age, if we do not take it seriously, I promise you, later on, we're going to suffer those consequences, because then you will not be able to do the things that you wish to do for yourself, just to begin with, and for the people that you care dearly for. So those are the things that you need to be thinking about at this young age, to say, what exactly does it mean to save? Does saving mean that I'm just taking the money, I put it in a piggy bag and I leave it there? Or do I take the money, put it under my mattress and I leave it there? Or each and every cent that I get, I use it to buy myself cold drink, to buy myself nice food and take myself to nice restaurants and all of that? Is that really what it means to have money? Those are the things that you need. And also the last thing now that you really need to think about is, what does it mean for you personally? What does it mean to have money? Does it mean having 10,000? Does it mean having 5,000? Does it mean having 2,000? Does it mean having 100,000? What does it mean to have money? Does it mean if you get 10,000 and you spend 10,000, you have money? Or does it mean if you get 10,000 and you spend 8,000, you have money? Does it mean if you get 10 and you spend just 2 and you're left with 8, do you have money? Those are just the conversations you need to start having with yourself more than anything, so that you can make certain decisions with your life. Remember, we said we need a regular plan that we're going to follow regularly, so that it makes sense to us personally. Because remember, everything is about you and you alone. And then the people after will then benefit from you if you make personally proper decisions. But now let's look at just the last thing that we're going to look at now. Now we're going to look at what it means to calculate under compound interest, what it means to look at inflation, what it means to also look at things like the exchange rate, because that's what inflation is all about. How does that affect us saving our money? How does the rate of change, how does it affect us saving our money? How does politics, for that matter, because those are the things that affect the state of economy of our country. Things like viruses and diseases, how do those things really affect the money that you have and you're putting aside and you want it to grow? But let's just jump right into it. Now, remember, our big idea is still about growth, and we are looking at patterns under growth. Specifically, we've been looking at simple growth, and now we're going to move on to compound and random growth. Now, a question I have for you just to think about is, Sibongile invests 500 in a fixed deposit account for 5 years. Let's understand. Fixed deposit account means that I am only just holding the 500 and I'm leaving it there for 5 years. And I just want it to grow. That's what it means, right? And then the bank offers to pay her an interest rate of 12.5% per annum, compounded quarterly. Remember, the concept of compounded quarterly means that this is given to her on a quarterly basis in a year for 5 years, right? But she is not getting 12.5% per annum, 12.5% every quarter. No, she is getting a fourth of that. So a quarter of 12.5% every quarter of the year until the investment actually matures. Now, the question wants us to calculate how much money she will have after 5 years. Before we do that, you just need to think about, again, how do you identify what equation to use to answer questions like these? And then what are the keywords? You saw that mainly on this previous question that we have here, the big idea here was this is compounded quarterly, so surely we're talking about compound interest. It was a fixed deposit, so this person only made one deposit and they left it like that. So it might be they saved up for a year and then decided to go and invest. Because remember, there's a difference between saving and investing. And then this, we just said now, it links to compound growth, which is the big thing. And the formula for compound growth is actually, as you can see it on the board, and we've been stressing this enough, so I'm sure by now it can now ring a bell in your brain that you don't even need to go to your textbook to look at what the formula is. Now you must be knowing this formula. Anyways, the formula is A is equals to P into 1 plus I to the exponent of n. And this represents the value of A would be the accumulated amount. Remember, I said we can even look at it as the future value. So how much will Sibongile have in the future? If her present value was 500 rands and she was being given the interest of 12.5% per annum compounded quarterly, and this investment was for 5 years. So that's what you really need to be thinking about when you're trying to solve this question. So going back to the question that we actually do need to answer now is the initial amount that Sibongile started with is 500, excuse me, and this was a fixed deposit account, and this was for a duration of what? 5 years. The bank decided to say, we're gonna give you an interest rate of 12.5%. Really, I would really be happy if I was to get 12.5% per annum on my investment, because it means, hey, after 5 years, I might be rich, but we will just see in terms of our calculation. And this was compounded quarterly. Now let's see how we will calculate what Sibongile will have after 5 years. So as you can see, the main thing that I always start with is to write down my data to show you what is it that we are talking about. Guys, it is really important because you're going to misplace certain values when you are thinking just, no, I will just wing it and I will just substitute. Just try to write down your data so that you know what is what when you are substituting. So our formula is A is equals to P into 1 plus I to the exponent of n. We want to know the future value, which is the value of A, but the initial amount that Sibongile invested was 500 rands, and this was for at an interest of 12%, which is 0.125, but this was compounded quarterly, so it was divided by 4 because then she got the interest 4 times in a year, but it must amount to the 12.5. And this, she got it for 5 years, but in each year she got it 4 times. So if you look at what I've just substituted now, guys, is the 5 times 4 there, it means that for the first year, Sibongile got the interest 4 times. For the second year, she got it 4 times again. For the third year, 4 times, like that. So in total, she actually got the interest 20 times. Not that she got the 12.5% 20 times. No, understand me. She got the interest 20 times, but the interest was a quarter of the 12.5%, which was per annum. So each and every year, after getting it 4 times, when they add the interest that we've actually given Sibongile, it must always amount to the 12.5. At times you will see later on in your schooling career when you're do financial math, you will see that it might be a bit different when we compare what the bank said we're going to give you and what they actually gave you because of the compounding period. But that's something we're going to be looking at a later stage if you pursue your maths and go forward with it. Now let's calculate this. So I'm just going to go to my calculator here. The initial amount is 500 rands, and this was invested at a rate of 12%, 12.5 that is. So it's 0.125 divided by 4 because it was compounded quarterly, and it was to the exponent of 20 because 5 times 4 is 20. Hopefully my math is still intact. Now, Sibongile actually got 925 and 23 cents, right? So this was 925 and 23 cents. And that's how much Sibongile had. Now, I always get questions like, if it is maybe comma 2, do I just write comma 2 and leave it there or not? Please, don't ever write just comma 2. If it's comma 2 and there is no number after the 2, you must include that 0 when you are writing it. Because we're talking South African rands here, and South African rands, after a comma, we talk about cents. So cents, if it's 2, it means it's 20 cents. It's not like under normal mathematics, under normal numbers where we say after the comma you don't call it as a number, you call them as individual digits. No, here you will say 20 cents because this is money. In money, I can't say this person got 200 rands, comma 5. What does that mean? You see, it will be 200 rands and 50 cents. So the 0 is very important for you to include. Please do think about those. Now, another question, we have Prajay here, which is Joseph. Invest 18,000 and it grows to 25,000 over a period of 2 years. How great would this be, guys? I'm getting 7,000 more in 2 years. I want to be Joseph, definitely. Calculate the interest rate to 1 decimal place if the investment and compound interest. Now I will verify something here, guys. You know, one of the things that you guys stress me with is you don't listen to the instructions, and then when we then mark you wrong, we then look like the bad people. But please, if I give you an instruction that I want it to be to 1 decimal place, it must be to 1 decimal place. And remember, this is an interest rate. It's not about money. Money, I will never say to you, round off to 1 decimal place. No, you will always need to round off to 2 decimal places. So please look at the instructions and listen to the instructions. Remember, the 18,000 is the P value and the 25,000 is the A value. And then I'm still asking you the very same thing. Since the question is like that, what does it mean for us? What are the keywords? What formula must we use? See, so you think about those things as you are trying to solve the question. So remember that they said this person got the interest that was calculated as compound interest. So that's our big idea, or that's our key word. So this is A is equals to P, 1 plus I to the exponent of n. I'm looking for the value of I there. And then my A we know is 25,000 is equals to 18,000. And this is 1 plus I, which I do not know, and this was for 2 years. Honestly, I really wish to be like Joseph, because if I can have 18,000 and I hold it in the bank just now and it gives me 25,000 after 2 years, yay, I can go to that bank running, I promise you. So remember the big idea here, we said you don't round off until you get to the final answer. So I will just do everything on the calculator here and just write down the values accordingly. So we're going to divide this by 18,000 and it gives me that. And then from there, since I want to remove that 2 there, I will take a square root on both sides. So it will be the square root of my answer, which will give me that. But you can see It's a very long number. So that's why I always say, try not to write them down. Just try and use your calculator so that you don't round off things. And then I will need to subtract 1 on both sides, and then that is what I'm going to get. I will multiply this by 100 to get it to be a percentage. Then it becomes 17,9. Remember, round off to 1 decimal place. So this I will then be 17,9%. Now, with random growth, let's just quickly run through it. These are real-world scenarios that do not always follow a pattern. So remember the exchange rate, inflation, and all that. And then changes cannot always be predicted. So you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. There is no formula to calculate that. Then the change can be uncertain and volatile, meaning the change cannot really always be what we want. It can be something completely different from what we want. And then mathematical models normally look at trends and cycles of what this means. And then an example of a random growth is for a foreign exchange, which is the international trade. It's normally in US dollars, and this normally talks about the cost of buying $1, which gives you an indication of how strong the currency would be at the time. Remember, the South African rand at times it's 16 rands to $1, or 17 rands to $1, or it has even gone down to being like 15 rands $1. You see, those are the things you need to look at. Also, you look at different time periods to look at what exactly the overall picture is. And then remember, it repeats in cycles. The inflation, the one perfect example is bread, guys. We bought bread for 10 rands a few years ago, and now we can be buying bread for like 20 rands. And you know, years to come, it will be like 30 rands to buy bread. So those are things you need to be thinking about, the rate at which those goods and services are increasing. And then I ask you now, how do you compare growth when saving your money? How do you then look at, is it better to get a constant amount every year, or is it better to get interest on interest, and that's compound growth? Now, these are the questions I want you to be thinking about whenever you have money. How do you compare your growth? Is it just going to be, no, I have 10,000, let me just go anywhere and save my money, or do I do comparison? My comparisons, do they involve me saying, I just want to get 100 rand every year for 5 years? Or is it saying, I want to get 10% of what I have at the end of that year every time, and that's compound growth? Guys, I hope you've learned a lot, because I've really enjoyed doing this, because savings is a very big thing in our country, and it's something that we definitely need to make sure that we master. It's all about numbers, because remember, mathematics is food for the soul. Until next time.